So again, we are going to have more videos to cover than normal in this module because we are talking about such a huge portion of American history. But we're going to start off, with the World War I stuff, and then once we get into the Roaring '20s, those are going to be a little bit longer of lectures because there's so much that changes in America during that time frame. And so we're going to try and keep the first couple a little bit shorter, and then we'll move on. We may have to cover like 2 a day or something like that to really get through everything, but we'll make it work, okay? So before we get all the way into World War I, there's a couple quick things you need to talk about that are going on in America at the home front. And we're going to start with the election of 1912, which is the election of Woodrow Wilson. He's a very interesting guy. He's a Democrat. He is the governor of New Jersey. He is the former president of the University of New Jersey, I think it's University of New Jersey, maybe University of New York. Double check that. I can't remember. I completely just went blank on it, though. Doesn't matter, really. Very smart fella, right? President of a university, generally smart fella. He doesn't look a whole lot like previous presidents. Teddy Roosevelt, really even like our current presidents these days, other than, he's a white guy. So that's similar, I guess. This is a dapper looking fella. I'm going to be honest with you. He runs and ends up winning a very interesting election because Wilson is quite different than Roosevelt. Now, he does win against Teddy Roosevelt, but you have to understand that Teddy Roosevelt had left the Republican Party. He no longer was running as a Republican because of all the different things that were going on. He no longer felt like, the Republican Party didn't really represent him. He had actually started his own party, which is kind of awesome. It's called the Bull Moose Party. Remember, man's man. They were like, "You're going to start your own party?" He was like, "Yep." And they were like, "What are you going to call it?" And he was like, "Something manly, like Bull Moose." And they were like, "Oh, yeah." Well, again, I feel like I'd probably have joined up in the Bull Moose Party. That's pretty awesome. But he's trying to push this new nationalism, this idea about the greatness of America, and trying to push that even further. And we see that with some of his reforms, some are really good, and some end up being more questionable, right? Some of his good reforms that we talked about were his domestic policy. Some of his bad reforms were, he kind of overstepped a little bit in foreign policy, a little. But Roosevelt really wants to regulate the big-time industries, railroads, mining, oil. And I think that Wilson would largely agree that he also wants to restrain big business, but he doesn't want a huge government. Roosevelt seems to want this humongous government that is in charge of everything and controls everything, right? Whereas Wilson comes along and he's very polished, he's very intellectual. And we see that a lot of times in U.S. history, the pendulum of an election kind of swings on this idea of does this guy seem likable? Does he seem smart? Does he seem well-read? Roosevelt seemed like a dude that wore leather around the White House and shot stuff just for fun. And a lot of America had stopped connecting with this. Remember, people had moved into cities and they didn't connect with this big, great outdoors kind of feeling, and then they really didn't want this imperialism idea. And so Wilson is going to bring some fresh air. And so he wins, and he announces what he calls New Freedom Capital, or New Freedom, capital N, New, capital F, Freedom, right? And he announces that after he wins this election, that this new freedom had been achieved in just 2 years of him being in office. So he's like, we're going to have new freedom. And then 2 years later, he's like, we got it. And then everybody's like, if you say so, buddy. Great. Yay, Wilson. 1913, they passed the Underwood Tariff Act. It cuts duties on imports and instills a graduated income tax on the richest 5% of Americans. Now, if you'll remember back, this is 1913. Graduated income tax on the richest 5% of Americans, right? Who was it that initially pushed for the graduated income tax? The Populist Party, right? And those people went down in flames. They completely were destroyed. People were like, these people were so unsuccessful. And then all of a sudden, some of their ideas start, again, leaking back into laws that get passed. So if you think back on the populists, that one of those things that they pushed for kind of comes to be. Hold on. And that was jumping ahead. And so this has been a long time coming. You have Carnegie and Rockefeller and J.P. Morgan. At some point, it's a reasonable measure that they are going to start to tax them more heavily. In 1914, they passed the Clayton Antitrust Act, which outlawed unfair trade practices and protects unions. And so for the first time, workers have an act that is going to be protecting them. And then by 1916, you have the Adams Act, and you don't have to remember all of these for sure, but you have an 8-hour workday for railroad workers, and it basically becomes a 8-hour workday for everyone. So again, Populist Party idea, by 1916, 8-hour workday, boom, implemented again. So really, the Populists kind of had it lined out. They were just ahead of their time, you know what I mean? Like Outcast. Huh? If you don't know who that is, you should. They're great. He announces that New Freedom, again, has been achieved halfway through his first term in November of 1914. And this is important because he achieves New Freedom just in time for World War I to break out. So he's like, hey, we got to get this New Freedom. It's this whole policy agenda. And then World War I breaks out, and he's like, hey, guys, we may have to step in on this just so y'all know. We need to say that New Freedom was achieved so that we can turn our attention to that. And they're like, yeah, New Freedom's done. Good. Eventually, World War I, he's going to try and muster support. And so this idea of New Freedom being done is kind of a PR move, and because he needs conservative Southern support for what he thinks is eventually going to be a war effort, and that's going to take us to the election of 1916. The Republicans are going to pick a man named Charles Hughes. The Progressives run Teddy Roosevelt, right, and under his Bull Moose Party, because Roosevelt's still trying to get another presidency, and there's no term limits. So Roosevelt had already served 2 terms, but there's no term limits at this point. So he's just trying to get reelected again. And Wilson continues to work on reforms, and it ends up being his benefit that Wilson is going to end up being reelected. He works again on behalf of workers. He attempts to ban child labor. He supports women's suffrage. And believe it or not, within a few short years, women are going to end up getting the right to vote. But again, Wilson is going to win that election and he's going to try and pass several amendments that we'll cover in just a few years that you will see happen over the course of about 7 years. And so it's this idea of really pushing forward these ideas of reform. So what does he get done? Well, during his time in office, from 1912 to 1920, you have the 16th Amendment, the income tax of that's in 1913, the graduated income tax, and really just even personal income tax, federal income tax. 17th Amendment, and he gets done. That's senators being elected by the voters. Boy, who else? Oh, the populists wanted that, right? Crazy. The 18th Amendment, which we will come back to when we get to the Roaring Twenties, but the 18th Amendment prohibits the sale, manufacture, consumption, and importation of alcohol, which we now know as prohibition. It's a fairly radical step, and that happened in 1919. And then he also has the 19th Amendment, which give women the right to vote in 1920. So it's not part of Wilson's first go-around as president, but it's the tail end of his second term. And of course, it's really, really important, in large measure, at least in Britain too, but both the U.S. and Britain are coming at that point out of the participation in World War I, and war efforts mainly, go towards manufacturing and working jobs. And the reason that women are able to get the right to vote then is because, hey, when all the men went off to war, the women stepped in, and they really got some pretty good social capital, I guess, that you could say, that ends up being pivotal in their right to vote. And so we look at the fullness of society, and you can see in almost every aspect of life, Wilson is very successful at improving people's lives and helping them become bigger participants in the government. And that's really what people wanted. Now, we talked about big stick diplomacy, and this is kind of big stick diplomacy in a really busy snapshot of a map. And so, obviously, you just need to make sure that you go back and study this and memorize all these dates. That was a joke, Kenny. Don't be afraid. No, but you can kind of see the big picture here is that the U.S., these are all dates where the U.S. invaded each of these countries. You can close your computer. They invaded these countries, all of them. You can see here, like basically every country in Central America, the Caribbean, and South America, all the islands. So Roosevelt's big stick diplomacy is very effective, and it continues to run through the 20s and 30s and 40s. And we're not necessarily worried about all of that yet, but this map shows you that America was very determined to fulfill the Roosevelt corollary, particularly when he was president, and then to continue to intervene in Central and South America and the Caribbean even after his presidency ends. But while it is important to note that we are extremely involved in these areas, we basically have a policy of isolationism. And you go, how can you have an isolated policy if you keep invading all these countries? Well, we basically said if it's in the Caribbean, if it's connected to the Caribbean, if it's connected to the Gulf of Mexico or this area here, any country that has a border with that is ours. We get to determine how it works. That's our sphere of influence. Everybody else needs to stay out of it, and we're not getting involved in anybody else's problems. We were very isolated. We don't want to deal with these people over here in Europe. They keep fighting over stupid stuff. They've been doing it for hundreds of years. We're not involved. They need to stay out of our way. And although we do have very few exceptions to this, particularly like the idea that we, have Guam and the Philippines, and also what we're doing in Hawaii at the time, for the most part, we are kind of in that idea of like, my name's Bennett and I ain't in it. Europe, that's your problem, okay? Oh, y'all want to fight each other and kill each other and by the millions? Have fun. We're not involved in that. You don't mess with the Caribbean, North America, South America, Central America. We won't mess with y'all. Leave us alone. Go away. Okay? So that's all going to change, however, when World War I kind of inevitably drags us in. Now, how does that happen? Well, you do kind of have a spark that ends up happening. You have a guy named Franz Ferdinand. He is the heir to the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And, it's called the spark that ignites the flame of World War I. But sadly, believe it or not, a crown prince or an heir to a throne getting assassinated was pretty common. Like, the French were killing, their kings all the time. Like, the British had killed a bunch of their kings. People were getting shot. This was a very dangerous time in Europe. It wasn't all that strange. Spain was killing their monarch. It was really kind of messed up. So, periodically, monarchs and people like that get killed. I mean, this is the one that kind of broke the camel's back, I guess, but there's a lot of kindling that had been built up. So when you do get a little bit of a spark, it's going to go up in a fire, but this is not the one thing that really happened. And so, because basically this isn't Western Civ, so we can't necessarily get into all of it, but Britain had been pouring gasoline on that fire for a while. They had a big stack of these. Y'all ever had a big stack of like junk or like limbs and stuff in the back? And like when I was a kid, we had a big pile of limbs out there, and like we'd burn it like every 2 or 3 years. And like at the end of the 2 or 3 years, it'd be like huge. And we'd just go out there and just like douse it with gasoline, which is probably bad for the environment, but who cares? I don't even like polar bears. They're mean. So heck with them. And so basically, he's the heir to the Austro-Hungarian Empire. There's a resistance movement against the monarchy from the people, known as the Slavs, who want their own country. They had this idea that we need to be independent, and they want to create a country called Slovenia, which like Yugoslavia was basically the name for it. But and they're pushing for a very long time. And so the situation arises where Ferdinand is going to visit Sarajevo, which is the capital of a place called Bosnia-Herzegovina. Bosnia-Herzegovina. Yeah. And he's going to visit the capital of that in Sarajevo in June 28th of 1914. This Serbian terrorist group known as the Black Hand is waiting on him, and so they're going to kill him. Gravio Princip is the guy who actually kills him, which is, guys, this is a story, it's a comedy of errors. This guy, Gravio Princip, he's a very young man. This is, he's trained in terror tactics by the Black Hand. He's from a peasant family. This Black Hand is, basically said, hey, you're getting crapped on by the government. Come join this. We're going to overthrow the government and form our own government, and it's going to be better for you. And this poor guy, who's probably like 17, 18 years old, is like, yeah, I want to be a part of it because his life sucks. So they hear, hey, Ferdinand's going to come to Sarajevo. What are we going to do about it, right? And it's actually pretty funny because, so here's a plan. You ready? The crown prince and his wife are going to drive through the middle of town. All right? This is a good story. And so they take this kid who's like not very smart and not very good at stuff. And they're like, hey, dude, this guy's driving right through the middle of town. I want you to take this bomb, okay, and throw it at him, okay? So you're thinking about like this guy standing on the sidewalk, a car is driving by, oh, hey, everybody, they're waving, like not moving fast. He's got a bomb, okay? He's going to throw the bomb. So he's standing out there, and he's got the bomb, he's got it in his coat or whatever. He's like, oh, yeah, I'm about to blow him up. And the prince goes by, and he takes the bomb out, and he like turns it on, or he lights the fuse or whatever, and he throws it, but apparently nobody taught him how to do any sports. And he's literally from like me to the wall, and he throws it and misses. He misses. He's supposed to like throw it like in the car so the car blows up, right? But he throws it and he like misses. And then people are like, did that dude just throw a boom? It blows up in the street and kills all these people and hurts all these people, right? And he's like, whoops. And he takes off running, right? And he goes and hides. So he goes and he hides out at his buddy's house, right? And it's above this cafe, okay, where he's hiding out. Now, this cafe is also next to a hospital, okay? So the prince and his wife, they just missed being assassinated by a bomb. They're like, that dude sucks at throwing. I'm glad he sucks at throwing. That could have blown us up. Did you see how big that bomb was? Oh, my gosh. Poor people. All these people got hurt. I'm sure his wife was like, oh, my gosh, we have to go check on them. That's like our people. And so they go and change their itinerary, and they're going to go and check out and see these people that got hurt by this bomb, right? So they go to the hospital, right? Now, Gravilo, Princip, he's up there and he's like, man, I missed. That was stupid. I wonder if anybody saw me. I'm getting pretty hungry, right? There's like a sandwich shop like right downstairs. Like, surely nobody is looking for me. I mean, right? So he goes downstairs, and when he gets downstairs, he goes into the sandwich shop and he looks out the window and he's like, he's just eating his sandwich. And lo and behold, the hospital that Franz Ferdinand and his wife are going to see all the people that were hurt by the bomb is right next door to the sandwich shop. So he looks out and he's like, that's that dude I was supposed to blow up. He's like, all right. So then he gets his gun. He's like, not going to miss twice. So he goes out and he shoots, and he missed. Yeah, he shot one of the generals that was with him, and then he shot again and killed him. Got him. Yeah, what a terrible assassin. That's a true story, guys. The worst assassin ever, right? And so it's pretty funny, to be honest. Not that, he killed somebody, but, no, they literally were like, hey, dude, you can't shoot him, and they grabbed him because he was just standing there. Like, he walked directly up. He's like, from here to there. He's like, I don't like you, Franz Ferdinand, and shot that guy. And he's like, and he reloads and then, like, literally puts it up to him and shoots him. Yeah. It was embarrassing. What a loser. Okay? Yeah, he had to have tried to fade away, but he bricked it, bro. He bricked it for sure. Yeah, dude, like, my gosh. So obviously he gets grabbed and arrested, and they put him on trial and find him guilty of assassinating the crown prince. Now listen to me. Listen to this. His sentence was 20 years in prison. He threw a bomb and blew up a bunch of people. Then he shot the prince and a top general to death. And they were like, bro, you got to go to jail for like 20 years at least. I mean, at most, like 20 years. Now, the dude's 18, 19. This dude could have got out before he was 40 and just been back on the street, hanging out. Unfortunately, though, he gets tuberculosis. Well, I mean, fortunately, I guess, not unfortunately. He was a butthole. Fortunately, he doesn't get out of prison. He gets tuberculosis in prison. He has to, they amputate his arm, and he dies from an infection in the prison hospital. So, probably, yeah. I mean, this is 1914. Yeah. Now, at any rate, this is the spark that ignites the flame of World War I. The question now is, okay, but why? We need to get, we have the metaphor of sparks and flames in Serbia and Hungary. And again, this is U.S. history, but we're getting a little bit into this because you have to understand what's actually going on to understand why U.S. gets involved. And so basically, you end up with Germany and Austria, Bulgaria and Turkey all teaming up and going against France, Italy, Russia, Romania, Serbia, Greece, and England. And then all of their colonies around the world. And so this has become a huge global thing. So it's kind of a chain reaction, and it escalates very quickly, the geopolitical context of this. And so the chain reaction is he's assassinated. Austrians declare war on Serbia because, Serbians. Then the next day, Russia mobilizes to defend Serbia. Then on the 1st of August, Germany declares war on Russia. France mobilizes because France and Russia are friends. Then Germans declare war on France. They invade Belgium. Then Britain comes to the defense of Belgium because they're friends. And so basically we have all this fighting going on, and it's just it's going into chaos. All right, and then, like I said, you have the Triple Alliance, and, everybody kind of gets dragged into this giant black hole of war. And so you have the Triple Alliance, the Central Powers, which are Germany, Austria, Hungary, Italy, the Ottoman Empire. And then we have the Triple Entente, because we apparently let the French name that stuff. So, but we call ourselves the Allies when we join in. Hey, we're the Allies, which is dope. Bro, that's kind of cool. And so England, France, Russia, and then Italy, who eventually actually flipped sides because they were getting the crap kicked out of them. And then eventually the U.S. And so basically you have Germany and Austria versus France, Russia, England, and a bunch of other smaller groups. Now the alliance system comes into play. If your ally gets attacked, you have to join them. We have a similar system like this called NATO today. It's a very dangerous system because Russia is dangerously close to attacking NATO allies. Like at one point in the Ukraine war, we thought that Russia had sent a missile that killed some people in Poland. If that actually did happen, it'd be on. Like big time. Like we have this thing called Article 5 in NATO that basically says if any NATO ally of ours gets attacked militarily, it is compulsory that we respond with war, which means that, and like I said, there was at one point that we thought a Russian missile like landed in Poland and killed some people, but it turned out it was Ukraine. But we didn't attack Ukraine because apparently they didn't mean to. But if Russia had done it and didn't mean to, we'd have gone to war. So it's kind of stupid. The people are going to drag us into dadgum World War III. No, we tried to put Ukraine in NATO, and Russia was like, it's all kind of ridiculous. But basically comes to be that you have imperialism, you have all these countries with colonies, you have nationalism with all these countries trying to be their own country, you have an arms race because of the Second Industrial Revolution, where you have all these weapons that are being built because, again, war is good for the economy. And you have lots of weapons and new technologies being built. And really you have Germany and Italy, which had both gained independence. Really at the time, though, it was called Prussia. And yeah, that's what they were called. And this is the time period that they saw as the Second Reich for Prussia. They believed that it was like the second coming of the Holy Roman Empire. And then World War II, you get Adolf Hitler, who says he's going to reinstall the Third Reich. But that's kind of the background on that. This is the Second Reich of Germany. And so definitely a chain reaction that takes place from all of this. And that's kind of just some basic background of what happens with World War I and how we got there.